beautiful beings. I'm here with Hannah, and I'm really excited for this because we don't know each other super well, but there's just this resonance about Hannah. And we both grew up in Melbourne. She's living in Northern Rivers now. She's studying kinesiology, and she's really passionate about feminine embodiment, sexuality, and I'm going to say pussy power. And I'll let you explain a little bit more behind that. But there's also this deep connection to nature and whales. And that's a big piece of why we connected. And just art, like creating a life where we're living our passion and our art. And so welcome. I actually want to start by, there's this beautiful painting behind you. And I would love for you to just the story behind that. Like, it's incredible.
Yeah, she's a work in progress. I still got to do a head. She's going to have big wings. I've been working on a piece prior to this one for 2 years, pretty much from like the start of COVID, and I've just almost like 99.9% finished it now. And I've never given so much time and energy to the detail of a piece. Like, it's this temple with honeycomb and codes. It's been, so when I finished that, I was like, I just need something big where I can be like
Wow.
have an expressive energy behind it. So,
and who is she?
Oh yeah, good question. I feel like all of my art is an aspect of me, definitely, but I feel it's more, I like to capture a feeling and transmit that so that can hopefully just offer as like a bit of a vibratory key when that's like vibrating and that's in someone else. I can be like, oh, that's familiar. So I was umming and ahhing about whether or not she was going to have angel wings or dragon wings.
Wow.
And I'm pretty obsessed with dragons, so that seemed like the obvious choice. But I actually feel like with her eroticness and her expressiveness, like the duality with the angel wings feels really good. And then I might put some snakes in there just to like.
Wow, interesting. Because when I saw it, like I really felt it's so interesting to hear like your process. Like it's about transmitting a feeling. Like I can feel the erotic nature, and I also like the blue. Like I actually really feel ocean and mermaid coming through. But then there's like mermaid, but there's that darkness like in the top bits. And so it's like, it's like the light and dark.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like if there's space, I want to put a dragon in there, and that dragon will be a water dragon if there's space. So yeah, definitely got that oceany elements.
So I want to dive into this word, passion. And what does passion mean to you? Like in your life, the word passion, the feeling passion.
For me, it's actually been interesting reflecting on this over the last couple of years, because when I first moved up here, I went through a pretty deep depression. I was very confronted with coming onto the obsidian land and the intensity of this. It's powerful healing volcanic land. It brings everything up, and just realizing how comfortable I had been in Melbourne, told by my family, in and out of traveling, and like here on my own for the first time. And yeah, I just didn't realize how cushy I had it. And I was in this state of like stress to create through my work, support myself through my work, which was putting this pressure on it. And then when that wasn't working, I was comparing myself, and it was just creating this tight pinch spiral that like got me in a pretty nasty place. And when I started coming out of that, I actually started getting up to go to the sunrise every day it was about a month before I started to feel a shift. And that was significant in bringing just like, I think it just plucked me out of this inner where you can't see past that. It was like I was able to get some perspective and witness what was going on. It just kind of shifted naturally on its own. And I understand sunrise and brain chemistry and how that all works. It's actually really, I feel meant to be in that way. But it wasn't until like I started coming back from that contraction point and I started feeling life again that I was like, Jesus, like, wow, this is what it feels to be just excited and lit up by life. Like I was driving around the area and seeing all the green and feeling life force and excitement again. So for me, I feel like this passion and purpose piece is interesting. Like I feel like, you know, people think I have this purpose and this is why I'm here. But if you're not living that, then it can cut you off from just being able to enjoy the passion of life and enjoy life for the sake of living it, like not needing a function. So I don't know, it's a big question. I just feel like passion is what sets your soul alight and like what your own soul wants to express through you and create in like whatever form that is. And yeah.
Beautiful. Because like some cultures don't even recognize purpose. Like there's this like it's kind of this new age millennial spiritual thing of have a purpose, where some people are like, what do you mean? Like your purpose is just being,
Yeah.
like, you know, existing, like a lot of indigenous cultures, right? Yep. Or they really recognize the spirit in someone, but it's not like this idea of purpose that we maybe think in, you know, the Western world, where it's like, oh, you got to create a big organization or you got to make a big impact. It's like, no, like you're just being.
Yeah.
And, you know, when I just hear you there with the passion, it's like, well, your soul's expression, well, that may change moment to moment, day to day, month to month, year to year, you know, and it's more like it's a moving thing to live your soul's expression, your passion, you know, versus this kind of, I don't know, idea of this, you've got this one purpose or something. And just so interesting that you bring in the contrast of depression and passion, because that energy of depression is something I've really moved through a lot. It's like part of, you could say, my purpose or something here, which is to transmute lower energies of melancholy and death, internal deaths, into higher states of bliss and passion. And I remember the first time I went through that, I actually went to a kinesiologist, and there was a talk therapist, and what was the other thing? I think it was energy healing, and all three things, what came up was the word depression. Like there was a resistance in the body. There was a resistance, and it was all to do with, you know, potentially my mother and when I was in her womb and her having mental health things and so there was this resistance in me already to that energy. And I didn't know what that was. And it was just like sadness, waking up every day feeling like nothing means anything. And there's a sadness. It doesn't matter if there's love in front of me right here or this thing that excites me. And as I went through that journey, I realized my body, because I've been through it multiple times now, my body is mourning before my conscious mind knows what I'm mourning. And so after every time of depressiveness, I've had this transformation. I've left the job, I've left a relationship, I've moved country, right? It's like a whole initiation. And I realize now that I just have to keep writing this. And when I was working more in the mainstream mental health, I saw so many people in depression and they would be on the drugs and the chemicals. But I've since come to realize that's messing up their neural pathways and their brain chemistry. And actually, it's a natural part of life to mourn a part of me that I've outgrown, to step into a higher passion, a higher, you know, intention.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. I feel like I want to, like, yeah, it's interesting with the medicine, like antidepressants and that kind of thing, because I feel like I just want to speak to in some cases, like I completely understand that it needs extreme intervention, but at the same time, it's like, it's such a unique thing. And like your chemistry is so unique. And I feel like just slapping a, you know, collective band-aid on this will work is, yeah, I think we're just really limited in our approach to it. And my teacher actually says, like depression is like deep rest. Depressed, and
Nice.
like, oh, you know, giving, just like leaning into it, as uncomfortable and confronting as that can be. And like, it's why I think people get so stuck, because they don't want to actually go into like the depth of the feeling. But when we have the tools to move through it and like, you know, through different things in the embodiment world and somatic psychology is really important with this. But yeah, just like if it's holding in the body somewhere, giving that the space to move can be sometimes all we need. And like sometimes that might need a bit more. But yeah, I just felt like for anyone listening wanted to drop that in. Yeah.
Yeah. And you kind of already started to talk about like the body stuff and the feelings and the tools. And yeah, like what was the thing that sent you on that journey of like the body embodiment, you know, those somatic things? What was the thing that initiated that? And just, yeah, talk a little bit about like that, what that is in your life.
Oh, it's my favorite. um, so my mum had a dance school. So I was born into it. I was 2 years old, started lessons when I was a baby. I was hanging in the doorway watching the big kids in the jolly jumper, like bouncing around. So I wanted to quit so many times growing up because like the dance world and particularly teachers can be nasty. And like they really pit girls against each other. And it's this warped idea of like perfection and body image. And I didn't feel impacted with the body image thing too much because I was very, very skinny as a kid. But I watched friends experience that. And so I wanted to quit a lot, and mum never let me. And I'm actually really, really grateful because coming out of school, I started going to festivals. And I remember this being a really key piece on my journey. I like stumbled into this beautiful sacred dome that had like moss and this mandala made of crystals and lights, and they had very angelic music being like played live and carpets and cushions. And I spent pretty much the whole festival in there. And I was like, I want to be a part of creating this at like these kind of spaces. So I was like, I want to be a part of creating these kind of energy at these festivals, and said that to someone who was like, this is my space. Like I create this, come and be my assistant at the next festival. So I went and I was his 2IC at Earth Core, managing the lifestyle village. And at the last minute, he asked me to host the opening ceremony for it. And I thought, oh, I'll dance in it. Like, just feels like a nice ceremonial way to open the space. And a girlfriend saw me dancing who I didn't know at that time. And she was just like, you have to come and be a part of our troupe, and invited me into a group called Eclectica. And that literally just snowballed my experience of understanding dance as a language and a transmission. And it's this real, I've got goosebumps, but real priestess energy of, we're particularly at festivals like Earth Core that are a little bit more, people are a bit out of their body and on drugs. Like you dance and you look them in the eye and like bring them back into their bodies and like coax them back into themselves, or they'd leer at you sexually and you just meet them with like clarity and compassion and be like, that's not what this is, and see them transform in that space. And like these women were all just so in their woman, and I was still like a little girl at this point. They really held up the mirror for me, and it was the first time I'd experienced dance and sisterhood in that way, where it was just like, I see you, like even though you might not right now, like you're amazing. And it was like, oh, until suddenly you start to really believe it and understand it for yourself. So yeah, that's kind of what kicked me off.
That's so amazing. And I just hear so much like, you know, on the woman's journey, the initiation or into the womanhood or the goddess, or this, like how important dance plays a role, you know, whether it's like things like dancing Eros. So there's all these, you know, women's embodiment programs that really initiate women into that. And I really hear that. And just as you're sharing, I just get this vision of, you know, because again, in my journey, like in the corporate world, it's like the conversation of gender equality is just it's a whole different thing. And I get it, because in that space, it's like suits and like toxic and da. But when you come out into not-for-profit, it's like men and women hustling. And then when you come out into embodiment or people going just more of the soul's discovery journey, it's a whole different conversation. Like when you're just speaking to sisterhood, when it's about coming into the body, and it's not having that conversation of give me equal pay or da da da. Like I'm just hearing, because you're in your power. It's the ability to transmit woman into a space. It's the ability to transmit someone's got sexual energy coming through to just transmit that. So versus the like mind trying to get power, or like power on some other level. And I just get this vision of Egypt. And I'm wondering, like, if you have any connection to Egypt, or just like any stories you have about that, because what I've seen in visions and all kind of healings and different things is potentially me being in a past life there, and being a warrior of some kind, but even understanding it was like, today in the wars, right? All these men come back from war and there's PTSD, and we do this counseling and things, and it doesn't go deep enough. But back then there was this idea that Egyptian priestesses, when the men would come back, that they would provide sexual healing. It's not about sex. It's not about, anything like that. It's about purity. It's about clarity. And then they would be able to go back to their families, after that healing. And the power of sexual energy, the power of women, and true equality and balance, and the roles that we play for each other. So I'm curious to hear if you have any journeys with Egypt, the Egyptian lineages.
Yeah, every cell in my body right now is just like, ooh. I literally put a post up this morning. I did a little transmission of me dancing in front of this painting, because I run a program, an 8-week program, which is a journey into the womb gates. And last night we just opened up into the 3rd womb gate, which is the priestess, and it's connecting with the clitoris and its connection to the 3rd eye, the pineal gland. They're like twin glands, and they form in utero at the same time. I could talk for days about that, but it was really bringing in that piece around the priestess last night. So it's awesome that you're picking that up. The priestess energy is just, and I think this is actually a really key part, or at least it was for me when I started having this awakening and tuning into the sexual shame. I started having these reoccurring dreams about being in Egypt and being a priestess and being slaughtered. And they would happen again and again and again, until I had this one dream where it was like a conscious, lucid experience of not this time. And I could go into that a little bit, but I'll put a pin in it for now. But it's just this idea of like, even if you don't believe in past lives, like ancestrally, there has been such a shutdown around our feminine expression, and such shame around our sexuality and what is our nature. And the witches, Egypt, like I feel like it's happened several times throughout history where we've gone in these cycles, and women who have been in their power have been like, that power can be scary to some, and also for those, especially for those wanting to control. And so we have this imprint around, when I'm in my power, I've been slaughtered for it, or I've been shut down, or bad things have happened. So it's really what I'm seeing with a lot of the women I'm working with is coming and reawakening that for them is really confronting, because they're like, I don't know what's going to happen. I could die. Like one of my clients last night in the call was like, I just feel like if I open that, I'm just going to die. Like, so it's a real nervous system, like recalibration that we got to open up into slowly. And like that's it with the priestesses. She was in devotion to the sacred and was a bridge between worlds, grounding light onto earth through her sexual expression.
Yeah.
And like that is really healing. And I've experienced it on the dance floor. And like, I feel like men, they want to know, they want to understand, they want to respect, they want to connect, and they're just doing it in the only way they've kind of been shown how. And so when you can meet them with like compassion and be like, hey, that's not what this is, but I'm here to meet you. Like, it just, it's a beautiful teaching.
And I'd love you to speak like, this journey, like what led you into the sexuality journey, right? Because like the idea of there was no solutions that were being provided to you in the mainstream or, the Western, like what led that down, and what have you learned through that process of healing? Because now you've become the teacher and the way shower. It's like there's clearly that, you're wanting to bring that gold back to other women, that's coming from your heart and your love and your compassion. So what was that journey for you? So for other people that are maybe experiencing that, they can, that are lost, that are looking for solutions and nothing's working.
Yeah. Well, I started being sexually curious very young. Like that was always very much a strong energy for me. Like I started self-pleasuring at like 6 to 7.
Wow.
And I had a lot of shame around it. Like, and I remember thinking at that age, being like, was I a prostitute in a past life? Am I a lesbian? Like, what's wrong with me? What am I going to tell my family?
You
And
thought of past lives at 6 or 7? You even had
yeah.
that in your consciousness? Wow. Okay. Wow.
I mean, my mum's very open. So
Yeah.
like she had us meditating very young, and like I've always kind of been on this trajectory. But yeah, I have no idea where the shame came from. Like I don't remember that ever being consciously projected onto me. And so I would do it and then have this guilt and shame, but not be able to stop.
Yeah.
And like when I was older, I remember approaching sexual situations where I feel like I had a lot of maturity. Like my partner I had a boyfriend at 16, and he was very nervous about losing our virginity together. And it was like, yeah, it's okay, we can wait. And I felt like I was sort of coaching him through that in a way. Like, and I don't know where that's come from, but it wasn't until I was in a relationship for 3 years that was very toxic, and it really reflected my need to be needed. And I'd only been with a couple of people before him, but he couldn't handle that. And he couldn't handle the way I expressed myself and the way I danced and the way that I dressed. And it was just a constant projection of like, you're a whore. It's like really intense. And so coming out of that, because at the whole time I didn't agree with him, like but I on some level took that on, and coming out of it realized that I had a lot of healing to do. And yeah, it was through journeying with candida, like that was sort of the physical manifestation of that shutdown, that I started looking into it. And I remember the first time I felt my cervix, it was because I had there was lots going on with the candida, and I was trying to explore what was kind of happening, and I felt my cervix and I thought it was a tumor. And I was like, and then I looked it up and I was like, oh my God, it's not a tumor, it's my cervix. I'm like, wow, how do we not know this? Like, yeah. So I remember our sexual education at school just being what happens when you bleed, the terrifying ordeal that it is to give birth, and how to put a condom on a banana. And so, yeah. So whenever I reflect on that, I'm just like, okay, so we've got to do something about it. So.
And candida, like your whole journey with that for 5 years, what have you come to as a realization for yourself around the root cause of candida?
Oh, well, I mean, there's lots of layers to it. I feel it's a big one around guilt and shame. It's sort of like the damp, moldy shame is sort of the feeling. But in a big way, it's also boundaries. So it's like your body's creating this physical, like, you don't want to let anyone into you when you've got a candida outbreak. So like you think of candida itself from a physical perspective, it's like we have candida in our gut. Candida is good. It's just when there's an imbalance that, we're putting things in that maybe aren't of complete honoring of ourselves. And we're not really listening to what we need, but we're just doing it anyway for whatever gratification, like the sugar, the food, the person. And so the candida is like trying to back that off. At least that was my experience from what I've explored with it. Like I think there's probably lots of different layers for people, but I feel like that's a core one to tune into, and it'll have its own meaning for people.
Because I journeyed with candida for a while, and it was in the gut and it was coming out my toenails, and kind of again looking for all these kind of remedies in the physical realm, and there was one healing I had with a woman who's a naturopath and plugged me on a machine and electrically shot me and all these things, and the machine shot out like I need rose petal stuff and a serpentine crystal, and then the only block in my whole system, this machine said, was the sacral. So even right now I'm just tuning in deeper to that layer, because it was like I then had a full Kundalini experience. I'm actually just getting this right now. A day later, I saw rainbows the whole 3 days through that. And I'm actually just seeing now, like, wow, I haven't actually tied the candida to my sexual awakening to some degree. And I know that guilt and shame was a real core there for me around my sexuality. And from my perspective, when I went deeper and deeper into that the guilt and shame is like, just by the fact I am distinction man in this world, in a male body, I have guilt and shame. And there's all this stuff around perpetrator stuff. I've had visions of going back and seeing, it's like when I'm in my power, probably similar to you, it's like the idea that I've been killed. And connecting that my power, like my power of not power over or power from status or job title or money, but the literal power coming through my system where I am in my power, right? In my groundedness, my mountain, my presence is my sexual energy, my life force, right? The most potent energy given to me in this body, right? In my semen, my sperm, like everything. And all that shame, you know, a lot of that has released through my anus and my penis, my phallus, like it's just stored there in the distinction of man, you know. And just hearing you before, you know, it's like, one, cool, candida. So it's like, we mostly deal with these things in a physical realm. We need to, as you said before, depression, sometimes people do need to just reduce, you know, with the drugs or something. But it's like, in my experience, that emotional, spiritual root cause is where we need to go. And if we're listening to the physical symptoms, it's going to show us the way. And it's going to take us into awakening, actually. So many people that I see in the mental health, depression, or really serious cases, actually, my perspective of them is they are highly sensitive beings in their nervous system and emotions, and they're the most primed to awaken. They are the ones that, if they go into the healing, will have the past visions and the things of traumatic experiences. Because again, we're going beyond this realm. It's like, cool, we can deal with the trauma in this lifetime and the emotional things and things, but typically it's not enough. Like when someone's stuck, it's because we have to go, again, whether you believe or not, in past lives, layers deeper into, doesn't matter if it's through the DNA, it's just memories stored in the collective that are coming through, right? And I'm meeting a lot of, especially people with connections to Egypt and priestess energy. People that I hear are in marriages that are like controlling, like shouldn't have been there. And then only later in life, after the kids are old enough, they leave, the women leave to reclaim the power, to come into what they've wanted to do this whole life. And I'm like listening to this and going, oh my gosh, people are like just settling and staying in toxic relations and things for the kids, and for, like, rightly so, from the heart, but like in things that are not right. They're in physical illness, like disease in so many layers, looking for the treatments in the mainstream world, but just managing it, not really getting the healing. And actually, on the other side of healing, it's a positive journey, the awakening, like the power, the bliss, the pleasure. You know, and I would love to dive into that a little bit for you. It's like, since going on that journey, like what has opened up for you around just bliss and pleasure and life force, and how has your life shifted from, you know, when you were exploring candida and like in the pain or the suffering of it? What shifted for
you? I feel like there's a thread around that I feel will lead us into the whales in a second.
Great.
Because I just remembered, I was like, oh my God, the original intention was to capture the impact whales had on mental illness. And I tried to get people I knew who had worked with that. And it ended up being its own boat. And it wasn't like a direct focus, but it was very much part of it. So put that over there for a second. I just want to, before I answer your question, I also want to say, like, I agree with the sensitive beings piece, and like Native American Indian culture understands that, like, people who have a sensitivity to that are medicine men and women, and they induce that in them so that they can journey through that dark night of the soul to be reborn as medicine man and woman. And it's like, it's about going through, and we don't have the tools. And I can understand with so much compassion that when you're in it, it's really hard to pick yourself up and like realize that you're worthy of something else. And especially having been in an abusive relationship, when you can understand that maybe it's their insecurities or their trauma that's like driving that behavior, and you want to support them because you love them and you see the best in them, but it's like, actually, you've got to It's not love. You've got to do you. So I fully get that. What's been interesting for me moving up here is like I just went on this incredible journey of like taking in all the information and doing my own healing and like coming into my own power and like feeling that again and again in the waves and the dips of it. But really in the last year, I've realized like kind of had to let go of everything I think I know and completely just come back to my body and pleasure and like deeply tuning into what feels good. Like, what do I want to move towards? What's a full yes? What's a no? And like listening to that as my main teacher. And with my work as well, it's like, does this turn me on some level? Can I like run Eros through this? Or, and I actually feel like even though I was doing a lot better, I wasn't doing a very good job at looking after myself. I was still like trying to do all the things, and all around me, everything was looking amazing, but it's like I was still abandoning myself. And friends have got these awesome meditation practices and morning rituals, and I'm like, I've never really had to do that. I feel good. I can get by, until I wasn't. And so, yeah, now I'm like giving myself, I guess it's actually a rewiring of like this internalized capitalism of like needing to be productive. And it's like now I give myself several hours in the morning. I don't start work before 10:30. And like I just put on some music and allow myself to move. I go for a swim, like allowing and knowing that when we are like not doing anything and like don't have to be productive, that like that is like sometimes when we need. And especially as a woman, like if you're not doing that while you're bleeding, I highly recommend implementing that at least for your first day if you can. And that for me has just completely recalibrated my nervous system. And I used to still, even though I was doing better, be in these intense dips of just numbness and emptiness and like no productivity. And I haven't felt like that for a long time now, just from making that shift. So, yeah.
Thanks for sharing that. And I'd love for you to expand a little bit more on just that phrase used, internalized capitalism. Can you just, that's awesome. Can you just, say a little bit more about that? I love that.
Yeah. Well, I think it's sneaky in this spiritual world because, we've maybe stepped out of the corporate or the system and we're like doing our own business, but it's still on an internal level. Like we have to be productive. We have to be pushing. We have to be successful and go, go, go in order to like make it. And like, that's not sustainable. And if you're a feminine being, whether you're a woman or not, but like we all have that polarity, even if you're a masculine human, like you need to support that balance. And it's why it's really beautiful for women connecting with their cycles and understanding the different ebbs and flows and like taking the pressure off just before you bleed and on your bleed and giving yourself permission to like actually do that. So that we're not in this, it's not realistic. Like flowers don't bloom all year round. Like that's reflected through nature everywhere, that, we're not wired that way. So,
Yeah. And yet you're starting to touch on, like you mentioned, polarity and masculine, feminine, and women have their cycles. And it's like even for men, I'm trying to think, it's like, the idea that we do have our cycle every day, a certain cycle, but it's like, I don't see those conversations or that kind of support for men. Like there's men's groups where we can share emotions and you can go do masculine, but it's like around that kind of conversation, right? Like, and I'm in the space right now of just the discovery of receiving and being. And I'm really coming up against myself, right? Like just being, like not, like that's not even meditating, like not even doing meditation, like just pure being. And I'm really just facing myself, noticing how often it's just, I'm just already thinking, or I'm trying to do something. And just coming up against immense boredom, or like it's like rediscovering what does it actually look like or mean to be, not read, not even meditate, like just be, and I feel like there's this thread here around like, you said something before, like, even toxic relationship things, but it's like when a woman heals, again, it's like we can go beyond gender here, but I'm just going to speak just to this context. A man heals, Like when you say there was someone before, like, you know, they're looking at you with that kind of sexual thing, and then you just stand in your power and it transmutes. It's like, boom, because the woman's in her power, and vice versa, right? When the man heals, the woman heals. And it's like, I hear there's so many women that are coming into spaces and doing that healing that needs to take place in that sacred women's space, right? For the womb or all the different bits. And there's men doing this healing, right? In these spaces. And it's like, what do you see, or what have you been a part of? What do you see the need for around women and men coming together after a certain level of that healing's taken place within themselves? Because what heals when the men and women come together from being empowered?
Yeah. It's time to bring men back into the temple. Like, yeah, it's been necessary, and it will continue to be necessary for us to have our own spaces, male, female bodies. But like that coming together is super healing. Like I went to a cacao ceremony held by 3 of my brothers the other day, and I was like, I think this is the first time I've been in a space that has been held just by men. And like it was so beautiful to feel their connection to their feminine, but that grounded, like masculine presence. And it's just like I think it's a unique kind of healing that only that space can offer, and it rebuilds the trust. And like it also on both ends, like not just for women retrusting men, but like, you know, we forget that like men have had a complete shutdown of their feminine too. They've been told it's not okay to feel or cry and to stuff that down. So like the little girl in every guy, just giving him permission to be invited and be a part of it. And like something I love about being in this community and being in this area is like every time we have a potluck dinner, we love making a point of giving everyone like a little bit of a group massage, but really inviting the men into like receive just nurturing touch from the women. And I'm like, that again, that's like what those temples used to be, was a space for just like deep healing. And I'm going to drop something that I haven't said publicly online yet. And I'm doing a podcast episode in a couple of months, and I feel like it's ready because of the shame piece. So I haven't shared this because of my family and how they see it. My parents now know, but the rest of my family doesn't. And I dabbled in stripping a couple of years ago, on and off, and I loved it. And like I was doing it to explore a space where I could play with that energy and also see if I could hold something really integral and clear in a space that has so much distortion. It was a bit of an experiment, and I would open a ceremonial space for myself every night and set an intention. And the nights that I didn't was when I maybe it wasn't a good time. I'd usually leave early. But the nights that I did, like I would meet men who just wanted to be held, like just wanted to be seen and heard and just looked at and wanted connection. And I fell in love with men in that space at a deeper level that I hadn't before. And it was so interesting to watch sisters who were in the same environment and would just be constantly bitching and complaining about the interactions that we're having and the kind of men they're attracting. And like, I had guys who sometimes didn't even want me to like dance or take like my clothes off. They just wanted to give me a shoulder rub and talk to me. Like, so I feel it's interesting. Like that feels like one of the only spaces that guys know how to go and get feminine nurturance or like receive the feminine in that way. And it's become a little bit twisted. And again, like it's not necessarily in itself. It's more like the clouded shame that, you know, it's like I'm here and I feel guilty about being here, but it feels really good. And at the same time, it's incredibly honest because I know I can hand over this much money, and for this amount of time, I can allow myself to be in full presence of receiving you. I don't have to worry about anything else that's going on. So
it's beautiful. You know why it's like stripping, there's already this taboo, is because of the consciousness of men that go to that with a distorted intention, or the consciousness of the stripper that's not there in integrity and presence, you know. So in society we have this taboo about it, but what I hear from you is when you go in your power and your presence and your integrity, it's actually sacred, and what you therefore attract in is going to be different clientele to someone else, and it is for the purpose of healing. I know for myself personally, it's like there are some, like, there's nothing more that parts of me love than to just be held, or as you say, like massaged or received from a loving feminine touch. You know, heart opening, tears, like that, right? And it's so sensitive, it's so vulnerable, right? And it opens up those parts of me that are maybe not safe to be all day long in that energy in society. And when, you know, when you're speaking to the healing of, you know, the feminine men, it's like, on my journey, there was deep feminine healing for me, and I did that. And then it became a space of, it's like I outgrew that. It's like I want to stop talking about my emotions or being just in the sharing circles, and that masculine, that there's like the deep suppressed masculine, I came back around, and that was a core piece for me. And then even the dark masculine was where my power really was, under all the shame and guilt, right? Because I see so many, there were like stages and legs, and it depends on the person's journey, but I see so many men who are like in their feminine now, but it's like they haven't taken the key back from under the pillar of their mother. And so they're seeing the world through the eyes of their mother, who had wounds with her father. And so the man has this distorted view of father and therefore self, and didn't, what the father wasn't present. And so he's in this feminine energy, and he can be this really safe space for women, but he's getting walked all over, never claiming his desires and never in his power, because he has all the shame stored in, right, his phallus and his anus. So like there are these, and it's not true safety too, because there's all this part that's like suppressed and, right, and hiding. So it's like there's these journeys, right? And I just heard you say, when it's like, when those your brothers were holding that space, like this restoration of trust, it's like, you know, the mainstream world, the mainstream feminist movement, it's like, is in its masculine, right, with the world. And it's like, I see all this shaming, and I hear all these stories of like, it's women that just like, I hate men and da. And now there's to have compassion for where that came from. It comes from trauma, it comes from being, right, at the effect of some man's act or something. But it's like, when I hear you, it's like you're coming into, it's like dropping all of us, men and women, into our softness, into our compassion, into our healing, into our forgiveness. So we're not taking the poison pill of resentment and hate. And then that's releasing it. And then it does require this journey of trust. And that's where it's requiring a woman who's on that journey to have men that are in their integrity, that are integrated, masculine, feminine, the shadows, right? And the same for women. Because, you know, from my perspective, it's like, when, you know, when I was not in my power, it's like women that were leaky with the sexual energy. It was like, I was just a victim because I didn't have power to that, like getting lost and then having my heart be penetrated because I was in the nice guy thing. And it was just like, you know, and then I had the porn conditioning, right? It's like, I was screwed. You know, just being thrown around like a pinball machine, not grounded in myself, not in my power.
Sorry, I just popped up with a call, so it muted you for a second. Just had to click out of that. I missed the last word.
Just not in my power. That's what I said. Yeah.
And I think as well, like this is a whole other rabbit hole, but like, men feeling that penetrative energy and not wanting to be a perpetrator. So if they're connected to the heart on some level, shutting that down. And then women who aren't integrated in their seductress and not wanting to manipulate, and maybe having done that and feeling that and then been like, oh, and then shoving that down. And so, it's like, I think what you said about the feminist movement, like the anger is necessary sometimes to come first, but it's also like, you know, the compassion and the forgiveness and understanding that hurt people. And like, when the whole Taliban thing happened recently with the reinvading, like that was something I was putting out there, is like, I am sending healing and love to those men in the Taliban. They are the ones who really need it. They are so in that darkness and that hate of the feminine, and like, you know, and I got quite a lot of triggered responses, you know, like, ooh, I'm like, that you got to send it to the core of it. That's, you know, so I really hear what you're saying.
I want to say thank you for the work you're doing, and you have done the healing, because as a man, that is healing for me. And that is, you know, as a one that's had an inherent fear of persecution, you know, and especially when I speak out about certain things and I hit the wounds of the collective. And, you know, to know that there's you out there and you're supporting women through that is, you know, is medicine for me. And I really just hear, you know, it's like when you say wounded people or create wounds, it's like then everyone, like not everyone, but there's a major part of society that's just connecting from wound to wound. And it's like, I know something that's super important to you is connection and union. And it's like, in my experience, when we go on this journey, it's like, wow, how deeply we can connect with ourselves and then other beings that we haven't met before, or to be able to hold space. And, you know, full cycle back to the whales, like whether it's a human or an animal or nature, like just want to open up a convo for you around just union and connection, and some of the experiences you've had that just have just blown open what's possible for you around how we can connect with ourselves, others, and whales, or just life. You know, when we open these parts of ourselves and we heal this.
Yeah, that's a beautiful bridge into the whales, actually. Yeah. So being out with the whales, like I knew it was going to be big, but I don't think I ever could have fathomed the awakening of that. And it's something I'm really excited for the documentary, because we talked to people beforehand and their view on whales, and it's like, you know, it's deep, and it's like, yeah, but then afterwards they're just like, you can feel how deeply touched they are on a soul level. And so we went out for a week. We had the 2 boats. We were out on the like furthest point of Fraser Island. So we're up on the Whale Highway, and we had several pods coming through every day. We had microphones in the water, and we were listening to their song as we slept under the stars out in the boat at night. And, you know, they'd wake you up with their at sunrise. So just like immersed in their energy. And the telepathic communication with whales is real, and I've never experienced that in such a strong way with any other animal. And something I was kind of tuning into beforehand was this idea of like our heart has its own magnetic field, and like it can amplify up to like 3 square meters or something. A whale's heart is the size of like a mini bug car, like one of those mini beetle cars. Can you imagine its electromagnetic field? And so we had a beautiful brother who actually, really interesting with the borders, like an entire boat dropped out before the trip. And within a few days of going, we had a whole new group of people come together last minute, and they were all free divers. A lot of them had a really close connection to the whales. Both of my filmers dropped out, and I had another guy who managed to come in last minute who happened to be in Queensland, beautiful Jono. And he spent a lot of time in Tonga with the whales and connecting with like the natives of that land and their ancestral connection to the whales and their language and the way that they communicate with them. And they communicate with them through dance under the water. So they're like mimic the whales' movements, and they spiral and move around. And the whales, he said, when he started to do that, this baby whale started coming really close to him, to the point where he was like, shit, I have to brace myself, because it looked like it was going to just ram into him coming really fast. And it just stopped about this close from his hands and just started going, and so they're like so playful, and they are so aware. Like we got this incredible drone shot of this 2 whales traveling from kilometers out. One of them was just swimming normally, and the other one was on its back going new for kilometers. And then when it got maybe a couple of k's away from everyone in the kayaks, disappeared under the water and came up within 3 meters of the kayaks and went with its fin and splashed them, and then just kicked off. Like he was so aware and like just came up out of his way to engage and play. And so, yeah, just like getting to know their personalities. And there were times where we'd jump in the kayak and I'd swim it, like paddle out after them. And like I could feel them saying, no, thank you. Like I'm just on my journey. And there'd be other times where they would go past and then they'd come back and turn around and like engage with us and swim around, and feeling their energy field, like as they swim under the kayaks, like all three women, and I did not expect this, is whales in relation to womb consciousness, because they swam under the kayak and all three of us women felt these waves of energy through our wombs, and it was a full like kundalini rising, complete womb recalibration all the way through our base. And we just, it's like you just, yeah, like no words, just
Wow.
complete unbelievable awe, and like understanding that they go to the depths, they go to the void and the deepness of the ocean. And like that is so much about the womb, is traversing through that void, through worlds, of being a bridge, and the whales going to the depths of the ocean, and that being a bridge into other worlds. And yeah, there's nothing quite like it. It was really like a before and after, like death. I'm alive now. I don't think I was before. Yeah.
Wow. Thank you. That's, the whales have been speaking to me, like, and I haven't had that. I've seen them, but I haven't had that sentient experience with them yet. And that's the calling to Hawaii, and they give birth there in Feb, in Maui Bay. And I just keep saying, like, to people in life, it's like, my life doesn't begin, my purpose, my committed relationship, like life, until I'm there. And I don't know why, but it's like when you speak to womb and birthing, and it's like not in the conscious mind. It's just the whale. It's just like I'm just following the whale. I'm just following to Hawaii, the heart chakra of the world. You speak of the heart, and that's something for me, is knowing that there is a strong heart thing in me, and that's like partly running through me. And so, wow, thanks for just tuning into that. And what I just hear in that is like, how so much becomes irrelevant when we can have that kind of connection. It just goes beyond words. It's almost ineffable. It's frequency, it's energy. And it's just like, as you said, like you weren't alive before that. It's just like, whoa, that connection. But to be able to get there, to do the healing, to open up, to let go of things, to be able to allow that connection to come in, to understand what an electromagnetic field is, to understand, what a journey.
Yeah.
What a beautiful, passionate life.
I'd love to drop something in real quick around just their vibration and their song. So like with this, like it was actually, it wasn't all like, wow, I have a deep, and I've been working with this for a long time. I've done free diving and I love the ocean, but I have a deep fear of like deep water. And to the point where 5 years ago, I would have been reduced to a panic attack in the same situation. And feeling this giant being that could very easily kill you if it just wanted to swim underneath you. And then when you enter the energy field, just actually feeling that calm you and completely open your heart, like the playfulness and the love that they're holding and that they're carrying up and down the coast and all around the world, and rippling that vibration out through the waters through their song. And the males sing, the women don't. And each year their song is different. It builds on the last song. So it's like they're bringing in these song lines, and like, we understand water receives memory and ripples and, takes on that energy, and that's being cast out across the entire planet. Like they're so crucial. I think the world and what they're anchoring would be a very different place if the whales weren't here. And interestingly, we were there. I'm just going to check. Can you hear that construction in the background? Okay, good. Just want to make sure it wasn't distracting. But we were there on the Lion's Gate, which, for those who don't know, is a star portal where the Syrian star comes into alignment with our sun. And in the Egyptian connection to this, it coincides with the flooding of the Nile, and so it's seen as abundance. And like the Sphinx points at the Syrian star. And if you want to get really galactic with it, there's these Syrian lion-headed beings that are anchoring diamond light codes into our solar system and supporting like the awakening of the planet. And I didn't know until that trip that whales are connected to the same energy. They're said to come from Sirius B, if you, again, want to get really galactic with it. But just feeling that portal open on a astrological scale and being there with the whales. And our trip was the only one that didn't get cancelled. Every other trip around us got cancelled because of the COVID and the borders. So it just felt like we were really meant to be there. Mm.
It's absolutely beautiful. I want to end with a question, which is like, where to from here?
Mm.
I know it's like to live your soul's expression, and that may merge and change, but yeah, what's alive for you now?
Good question. I think I'm still figuring that out. I've been asking myself that, like, what if obstacles weren't a thing? What do I want? What feels alive? I feel a deepening of connecting with water through my work with the womb and that feminine aspect of everything else I've been talking about with this sexual healing, bringing that to the water, and creating, like, these groups that are activated in themselves and their sexuality and their wombs and passionate about water conservation. So that's a seed that's budding. And I think in the long run is like, I realize I actually just want to create temple space. Like, I would love to eventually have a space that is like a beautiful hub, and like beautiful, not just like a warehouse, but like something I build and design the architecture to be, awesome, to just have like a sacred anchoring point. But for the next year I'm studying, so I'm kind of just still buckling down and trying to fit that in before I'm 30. So
Plenty of time. Yeah, I can just see that vision of that temple space that you create. Yeah, it's beautiful. It's amazing.
How about you?
I don't know yet, other than Hawaii.
Yeah.
Like it really. Anything I say is like so temporary.
Yeah.
And I just really get that transmission from you today. It's a womb for something for me.
Mm-hmm.
Going there.
Mm-hmm.
And for now, just being.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Yeah, I'm gonna like carry that out of this call and remind myself to just like let go even deeper, because I'm getting better at it, but I still there's still some work to do there.
Just want to thank you so much for
Mm-hmm.
coming on today and sharing your wisdom and your transmissions and your passion, and
Pleasure.
just infinite blessings for your studies and this dreaming of a temple space. And I feel like really important work with women in the womb and the waters and the whales, like it's all connected in a beautiful way.
Yeah, thank you for today. It was just like, it was amazing, all the threads that just, yeah.
It always threads.